Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a 2028 presidential election prediction, which is very realistic. This is not a hypothetical matchup. This very well can happen between California Governor Gavin Newsom, who will be taking on the current Vice President JD Vance. So, as we all know, there are a bunch of wildfires happening right now in California. And the point of this video is basically how this particular, situation could impact this race if Gavin Newsom does somehow end up getting the nomination. Now, if he doesn't get the nomination, in my opinion, probably Josh Shapiro would get it instead of him, or maybe someone like Gretchen Whitmer. I think those are the top three candidates on the Democratic side as if right now. But if you take a look at the current betting odds right now on the Republican side, JD Vance probably has the best scenario, but we don't know who's going to run. This is 4 years away, so anything can happen. And if you're probably wondering, will it end Gavin Newsom's political career? And basically, will it impact him as far as the Democratic nomination goes? In my opinion, it's not going to, because the average Democratic voter, if you're a lifelong Democrat, you're probably going to forget about this. I mean, the election is in 4 years from now, and I think, in my opinion, the average Democratic voter will not be swayed by this. They won't be turned away from this. I just don't think that's going to happen. And if you're probably in LA, then I think maybe it could turn you off from Gavin Newsom. I think, in my opinion, no, Gavin Newsom's base is only in California. I mean, Democrats across the country don't find him very popular. He's only popular in his own home state. And he's got recalled, by the way, so you can even argue that he's not even popular at all in his own home state. But out of California alone, Gavin Newsom will not survive, and that's why I think he's not that strong in the primaries. Now, what I will say, if you're a Republican, do not underestimate Gavin Newsom. He's been recalled, and he still won that recall by overwhelming support. It was not even close. So my message to you, if you're a Republican, is do not underestimate him. He can very well wind up winning the nomination. I won't be surprised at all. But before we get started with this prediction, with the impact of the wildfires, how that can affect this race, will it hurt him significantly in this election matchup? Make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss out on my content, press the like button. Don't forget, if you're interested, we have memberships, so you can find the links to that in the description section. So let's begin with this map. But here's a little bit of background information on these fires. So far, 16 people at least have been killed. There have been at least 6 wildfires throughout the LA area, and high winds, obviously, and the air quality has been pretty much poor. There was a point with these fires for 2 days straight with 0% containment. There was a point in which 2 days have gone by and those fires were still 0% containment. But now, obviously, we're like, 5 days into this thing, and I believe 3 fires are at 100% containment. But the main one is at just 11%. Just 11% containment for, I believe that was the first fire. And we're like 5 days into this thing. So that will still burn till this day. By the way, fire hydrants weren't even working. Canada had to send water bombers, literally, to California. And I believe a drone even hit one of those water bombers from Canada as well. And even Mexico's sending firefighters on the way, because apparently there are shortages, and over 7,000 first responders have to be called. Gavin Newsom even called the National Guard to this, so this is not a joke. So I think this could very well be devastating to Gavin Newsom's political career. Now, in terms of winning the general election, I think this will probably negatively affect him. But in terms of winning the Democratic nomination, I would pretty much have to see other candidates. I think he can very well still be able to win the nomination, but I don't think he'll survive a general election, actually. And one last thing I forgot to mention, at least 30 people have been arrested for looting the homes of people who already have evacuated or fled. So basically what people do is wait for them to evacuate, and then they go to their house when obviously no one's home, and loot before the fires can get there, and then they take the stuff, and that's how they get away with it. So far, 30 people have been arrested. Now, talking aside, let's begin with this prediction. Let's begin with a few states that are no longer considered battleground states. They are now in the solid column for both Democrats and Republicans, starting off with Colorado. I don't consider this as a swing state anymore. I think no matter who the Democrat candidate is going forward in future elections like 2028, it will be solid blue for them. They'll probably win the state by over 10 percentage points, including Gavin Newsom. I actually think Gavin Newsom can do pretty well in the state of Colorado. And then, as for the Republicans, I think Iowa is no longer a battleground state. I don't view it as a swing state anymore. I think it is now solid moving forward in future elections in 2020 as well. Ohio is no longer a swing state in my eye. I think it is now solid Republican. Same thing goes for Florida. I do not consider this battleground anymore. I think it is safe Republican. No matter who the candidate is, I think J.D. Vance could probably get this state up by around 10 percentage points. So now that we get those out of the way, now let's move on to typical solid blue states that are no longer solid for the Democrats, which is New Jersey. I don't think New Jersey is safe blue anymore. You take a look at the voter registration roll. Republicans keep gaining tremendously in terms of new voters on their side. And you take a look at the 2024 election. This state has shifted tremendously towards the right. Just, 4 years ago, Biden had won it by 16 points, and then Harris only won it by 5 or 6 percentage points. That's a swing of roughly 10 or 11 percentage points to the right in favor of Donald Trump. And even Hillary Clinton still did far better than Kamala Harris. She won it by 14. Harris only won it by 5 to 6 percentage points. So I think moving forward, New Jersey will be a whole lot closer, and Democrats will start to lose a lot of ground in this state. Now, keep in mind that Trump did have 2 rallies here, so maybe that swayed things. If J.D. Vance doesn't really campaign a lot in New Jersey in 2028, maybe it won't be as close as it was. But I do think the shifts in the trends, just in general, demographics overall, really show that New Jersey will be a swing state in the 2020 election, just how it was, a lot closer in this election as well. And then New Mexico, I think, is going to remain likely for the Democrats. I think this state is kind of too far gone to the left for Republicans to overcome. Donald Trump still lost this state. Kamala won it by 6 percentage points. I don't think J.D. Vance can do as well with Hispanic voters as someone like Trump did. Therefore, I don't think this state will be competitive at all. Gavin Newsom should perform good. I think he'll win New Mexico by probably 9 percentage points. I think he'll do better than Kamala in this state. And then Virginia, I think that's a likely Democratic state for Gavin Newsom. In my opinion, he would win it by probably around 6 percentage points, slightly more than Kamala Harris. I think Republicans really had all the momentum in Virginia for the 2024 election, and Trump still fell short. He actually did worse than I thought. I had him winning it right before the election. I actually had Harris winning it, by 3.5 percentage points, actually 4%, and she ended up winning it by more than that. She won Virginia by a little over 5 percentage points. So Donald Trump was a little bit of a disappointment when it comes to Virginia. The state's very blue, and especially considering that Glenn Youngkin will not be the governor in this state, he cannot help J.D. Vance just how he did to Donald Trump. Therefore, I think Virginia is actually going to shift further to the left in favor of Democrats. And then as for New Hampshire goes, I think this state, you can argue, will be likely for Gavin Newsom. I'll characterize it as lean. I think he'll win it in this scenario by 5 percentage points, an improvement compared to Kamala Harris. She won it by almost 3%. I think he'll get it by 5. I think there's a lot of college-educated voters in this state, which will really favor Democrats, just how it did in the 2024 election. I just think New Hampshire is a very left trendy state. It's going to shift even further to the left, just like Virginia as well. And then I think Texas will be likely for J.D. Vance. I think this state is pretty much out of reach for Democrats, and time again in recent elections past, they were hoping that they can make the state within 1 to 2%, possibly even flip it, which just did not happen. For example, in 2020, Trump still won it by 5.5, and Democrats thought it would be closer than that. In the 2018 midterms, they did come very close, as Ted Cruz only defeated Beto O'Rourke by just about 1 to 2 percentage points. But then in the 2022 midterms, Greg Abbott absolutely destroyed Beto O'Rourke in the governor's race, managed to win by double digits. And even in this election, 2024, Donald Trump won this state by about 13, I believe, percentage points. That's a solid red margin. And J.D. Vance, I think, can do very well in this state. And it depends how the border situation is. If things are very calm and cool, I think that will really help Donald Trump in terms of approval rating. And therefore, I think Texas will go to Vance in this scenario by probably around 8 to 9 percentage points. I would say high single digits, which will be considered a likely margin. And then as for Gavin Newsom, I think Minnesota will be lean for him. I have him winning the state by probably around 5.5 percentage points. I think where Gavin Newsom can perform well in Minnesota, I would say probably Minneapolis, obviously the suburbs. Now, I think the main reason why Kamala did pretty well, I would say, in Minnesota, I do think she did good, was because obviously Tim Walz as her VP, this is his home state. He's the governor here, so I think I don't want to overrate the VP position. I don't think that really affects the race, but still, I think that played somewhat of a role. But that's the only reason why Kamala ended up winning this state by the margin she won it by. I believe it was like 4 percentage points. I think Gavin Newsom can do well. I'm not sure if JD Vance is going to do anything in Minnesota. I don't think he can really move the needle. I think this state is a very blue state at the current moment. So I would say lean for Gavin Newsom. And then as for the lean states for JD Vance, I think North Carolina will be lean for JD Vance in this scenario if he does face off Gavin Newsom, with obviously the fires being an impact in this race. And then Georgia, I also think will be lean for JD Vance in this scenario, as well as Arizona as well. Now, like I mentioned for Texas, it depends how the border situation is. If Donald Trump really keeps his promises, then I can see Arizona being a very red state. Now, before the 2024 election happened, before we got the results, I had said that Arizona was a left trendy state because of the 2022 midterms. They elected Democratic governor for the first time since 2009. Also, they have a Democratic senator as well, Ruben Gallego, actually 2 Democratic senators, and Mark Kelly. So Arizona is really trending towards left. Now, I still believe it is, even after the election, but on the general election, I still think they will continue to elect Republicans. Donald Trump had an amazing victory. I think he deserves a lot of credit. He overperformed my expectations in Arizona. I had him winning it by just about 2 points. He actually ended up winning it by a likely margin of close to 6 percentage points. So that's good on Donald Trump's part. He did very well in Maricopa County, Yuma, and Navajo as well. I think JD Vance can perform very similar in this state. I have him winning it by about 3.5 percentage points. I just think because the border won't be as much as an issue in the 2028 election as it was in 2024, that's why things can get very close. And also, Arizona borders California. So if you have a lot of Californians moving to Arizona, maybe they bring their political views with them, and that will cause the state to maybe shift towards the left. I think JD Vance will still come out with the victory. And then as for Georgia goes, I think this state is going to be very blue in the future. They currently have 2 Democratic senators, as we all know, Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff as well. And I think the main cause of this is because of Atlanta, the suburbs, obviously, and overall with African-American voters. I think Kamala did pretty well in the state of Georgia in this election. Trump only won it by about 2 percentage points. So I think moving forward in the future, like 2028, if Democrats play their cards correctly, and if they nominate a strong Democratic candidate, someone who's moderate, who can win over Republican voters like Josh Shapiro, which is exactly what he did in Pennsylvania, which is why he won by the amount he did of 14 percentage points, then if he wins over Republican support in Georgia, I think Georgia can actually go blue on the general election level in 2028. I'm not kidding. But I don't think Gavin Newsom is a strong candidate whatsoever. I think JD Vance has the edge in Georgia. And in my opinion, JD Vance might actually perform better than Donald Trump. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I do think that Donald Trump would slightly perform worse than JD Vance. And then as for some of these Rust Belt states, actually, let's finish Nevada before we move on to the Rust Belt. Lastly, I do think JD Vance will defeat Gavin Newsom in the state of Nevada by about 1.5 percentage points. Tilt margin, maybe you can argue lean as well. This state, just like Arizona, borders California, so maybe people moving away from there to Nevada could really not like Gavin Newsom, how he handled things, especially with the impact of the fires. I think a lot of those voters will regret Gavin, reject him. And I think JD Vance can perform well in Clark County. Harris only won it by 2 points. Trump really had skyrocket turnout. And Harris, I believe, still won Washoe County in northwestern Nevada. Maybe JD Vance can do good there, but Trump won this state by about 3 to 4 percentage points. I don't think JD Vance will win it by that much. Maybe I would say 1 to 2%, but still, Gavin Newsom will not win Nevada in 2028 in this scenario if you were to face off JD Vance, especially with the impact of these fires maybe negatively impacting him, and especially when these two candidates, if they do debate in 2028, I think JD Vance can really attack Gavin Newsom. I think he's very weak on the issue of the wildfires, how it was poorly mismanaged. I mean, forest management was just an utter disaster. You had fire hydrants not even working. You had to ask two countries, not one, for help: Canada and Mexico. You had firefighter shortages. You had people looting homes, and you had people dying, obviously. So all those things I just mentioned, JD Vance can really attack Gavin Newsom, which is why I think on the general election he is a weak candidate, even though he maybe can still win the primary. And then as for the three Rust Belt states to end off this video: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, I think Gavin Newsom can win at least one of them. I think he's going to win two of them in this scenario, being Wisconsin and Michigan. I think the reason why Gavin Newsom wins Michigan in the 2020 election against JD Vance is because the Gaza issue, obviously what's happening with Israel, is not here to save JD Vance as it did to Donald Trump. I think the main reason why Trump won his state of Michigan in the 2024 election was not just because Kamala was a bad candidate and she had no Rust Belt appeal, because she's from California. Obviously the West Coast has nothing to do with the Rust Belt, which is the same thing goes for Gavin Newsom, by the way. He also does not have the Rust Belt appeal, which is why I think JD Vance will win Pennsylvania, because he actually does have the Rust Belt appeal. He's from Ohio, obviously. But I do think that the Rust Belt still obviously has a Democratic voter base. You have the blue wall. So I think Donald Trump narrowly won Wisconsin by just 0.9%. He won it by a tilt margin, and I really can't name any other Republican besides Donald Trump that can perform that strong in the Rust Belt. I mean, if you nominate someone like Ron DeSantis, for example, then he's probably not going to do that well in the Rust Belt, and I honestly can see him losing the election. I think he would perform better in the Sun Belt. But I think JD Vance is one of those few Republican candidates that can potentially break the blue wall like Donald Trump did, but just he won't perform as strong, which is why I have him winning one of the three Rust Belt states instead of two or maybe three of them. I think Gavin Newsom would still win Michigan and Wisconsin. Wisconsin actually surprised me because I thought it would vote to the right of Michigan and Pennsylvania, but it ended up being the opposite. It actually voted to the left of both of those states. So I think because the Democrats obviously have their coalition, their base, the blue wall in Wisconsin, I think it's very easy to flip those states. JD Vance would have to fight hard, but it doesn't matter. Even though Gavin wins Michigan and Wisconsin, he still loses. JD Vance will win with 287 electoral votes because he does get Pennsylvania. I think Republicans made massive improvements in the state of Pennsylvania. David McCormick defeating Bob Casey. That really shocked me. I did not expect that to happen. And because David McCormick unseated Bob Casey, which never happens, people called him electoral juggernaut. Even myself, at some times, I thought he would win. That really shocked me, and I think therefore Pennsylvania will be good for Republicans in the future. Now, as far as Wisconsin goes, I'm not so sure. I think Kamala actually overperformed my expectations, and like I said, what happened with Dearborn, Michigan, the Detroit area. With Gaza, that issue, it's not here this time around to save JD Vance in the 2028 election. Obviously, that issue will be long gone in the past. Therefore, I think that's going to be a blue state in 2028. So 251 electoral votes for Gavin Newsom, 287 for JD Vance. He will win. This is the map with the impact of the fires being a result. I think that will affect this race, but it's not going to affect the primaries. I think it's just going to affect the general election if Gavin Newsom, does make it that far, because I don't see the average Democratic voter being really pissed off by this issue. But when it comes to the general election, obviously you have a lot of independent voters, undecideds, and they will think back to this issue even though it's 4 years ago, in 2028. So there you guys go. This is my prediction in this scenario. Let me know what states you agree with or disagree with in the comment section down below and why. One last final reminder to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss out on my content. Press the like button, share this video. Don't forget, if you are interested, we have memberships You can find a link to that in the description section. Thank you everyone for watching.